I want to welcome you and wish you to our reunion of the Motorettes and conductors. It's our 50th anniversary. Come aboard. I got so nervous. I did it. The very first time I was on that streetcar, when the signal was to go, I pulled the cord so hard I broke it.
And the streetcar jumped the track, and I ended up in somebody's front yard.
And she said there was a spotter on, come up to her and said, boy, he says, aren't you driving too fast? She says, who in the hell's driving this crate?
Recently, several dozen women gathered near Lake Harriet for an unusual reunion. For a few years, they shared a common job that was anything but common, and now they share their memories with us.
In 1938, 80% of Americans disapproved of jobs for married women. But following the British lead in World War II, 6 million women went to work.
I'm the girl that makes the thing that holds the oil.
Of course, not every woman working during World War II aspired to be Rosie the Riveter.
Queen of the Welders contest.
Some women traveled a different path of wartime service.
Oh, I love it. I wanted to see if I could still use the brake. Oh, yeah. I didn't mean to do that.
Lou Norgren is one of 500 Minnesota women who served their country during World War II by keeping the streetcars running.
In 1943, the streetcar company was desperate, and they turned to women to run the streetcar system, and it worked just fine. And it's a message that most bus companies didn't learn again until the 70s when they started hiring women.
This month, 50 years after women first began driving Twin Cities trolleys, the Metropolitan Transit Commission honored its forgotten motorettes and conductorettes.
Do you remember Carol Kelvin?
Their reasons for working varied.
Well, it was something to do because my husband was in the service. And then when he came back, then I quit. I needed the money to support my sons. Government only gave me $100 a month, can't live on that.
For driving or conducting, these women earned about $1 an hour, a salary that didn't sidetrack what many considered a dream job.
It was wonderful, wonderful. I really loved it.
Of course, even wonderful jobs have their jolts, as the headline and Florence Hill recall.
Well, I got hit in the face. The pieces in there, too. Guy broke my glasses because women were taking men's jobs, he said.
It's memories like that these women hope won't be forgotten. So, on a recent sunny Saturday, dozens of former motorettes and conductorettes queued up to reminisce and ride the lines they used to run. A few women took turns steering once again.
Does anyone want to go back it up? No, let's go forward.
Clattering down the Lake Harriet track was a trip through time for Helen Swanson.
I'm going to sign up and become a motorette again. The biggest, nicest job I ever had in my whole life.
But for Ms. Swanson and her fellow streetcar colleagues, the joyride ended abruptly in 1945. Once the war ended and the G.I. Joes came home, the motorette Mavises and the conductorette Kates were mustered out of the driver's seat. Mustered out, that is, until a sunny Saturday, when once again women ruled the rails.
Oh, this is great. This is living. Oh, gosh.
May we hope that in time there will be light rail transit to help us forget how wonderful those old streetcars really were.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Redeem, and I worked at the Nicollet Lake Streetcar Barn. And I can remember the time when I first started, which was in 1944 to 45, I wrote my trip sheet out wrong. And it was the only time in history I was told by Mr. Peterson that there was an hour layover on the track.
Hi, my name is Lou Fairbanks Norgren. I worked at a Lake Street station. Mr. Coombs was my boss. Andy was trip sheet man. And I was a motorette, drove streetcar on Lake Street. And I think one of the incidents I always remember is one of the older fellows that was a conductor, and I worked with him one day, and I was pretty nervous about it, and I was driving a gate car. And when we got done after our run, he came up to me and said I drove smoother than any man he ever drove with. And that's a good one.
Hi, I'm Virginie Smith Cloutier. I worked out of the East Side Station from 1944 to 1946 when I was married and had to follow my husband back to the service. I worked on the Como-Harriet Line, the Oak-Harriet Line, the farm campus, and the Como-Harriet Line was lovely. It was a 3-hour round trip. We went from the East Side Station up through the 2 lakes up to 60th in France, and there was a little store that we could buy refreshments, and that was the last stop for 3 hours as far as we were concerned.
Hi, my name is Helen Murphy. My motorette number was 4711. I worked out of Duluth and 7th Street stations in St. Paul. I loved the job. It was a different experience every day. The one I remember the best is VJ Day and everyone celebrating. And I was driving up the street, so I had a good view of all this going on. In downtown, you couldn't get through, so I only had 1 trip out of 4 that day.
Hello, I'm Agnes Chavez from Minneapolis. I used to live in St. Paul. I was motorette in St. Paul. And it was quite an experience, especially in the wintertime when we had a lot of sleet and rain and snow. We always had to get out and chisel out those switches. You couldn't turn them inside the streetcar. You had to go out and chisel them out. It was quite a chore.
My name is Helen Zarembo. I worked on the Lake Street line. Happiest moment was when VJ Day was here. And I remember very vividly when we went to St. Paul to get a job at the Lost and Found. And they didn't want anybody for the Lost and Found. They saw us and said, motorettes.
Hi, I'm Margie Knudsen. I used to be a motorette out of the Lake Street station. The times I remember most are the kids pulling the trolleys off, so us women had to go out and put them on. I think the night shift was the most difficult. You hauled a lot of drunks.
In tonight's Extra, a look at the streetcar's place in Twin Cities history and a pair of unlikely pioneers who became a part of that lore. Helen Zarembo and her sister Bonnie Rudine were simply looking for work when they signed on with the Twin Cities Rail Transit Company during World War II. But as KARE 11's Alan Costantini and photographer Tom Empey show us, they instead became a part of streetcar history.
Bob Schumacher has a dream job. All summer long, he boards the historic Como-Harriet streetcars on the shores of Lake Harriet in Minneapolis. But Bob isn't some tourist. He's a motorman. The controls of these nostalgic machines from a not very politically correct era of Twin Cities transportation were for men only. Until, of course, they ran out of men.
Well, my sister and I wanted a job because the men were all gone, and I didn't go to bear joints and things.
Helen Zarembo and her sister Bonnie Rudine were in their 20s during World War II. With most young men in Europe and the Pacific, the Twin Cities Rail Transit Company broke its taboo on women, hiring hundreds of so-called motorettes and conductorettes.
Well, 464 is the count that I have. And there were up to about 180 of them at one time, and that was 1943, 44, and 45 that they were hiring.
In the case of Helen and Bonnie, there was one little problem.
Neither one of us could drive a car. Never have driven, neither one. So I said, So they said they'd teach us, it wouldn't be bad. And it was fun.
Well, I felt like we were kind of doing something unusual at the time. And my mother was thrilled. She thought it was great.
I met people coming from, getting on at the railroad station, coming home to see their family, the Navy men, and they get on the streetcar and they'd say, I don't believe it.
But this touch of women's liberation only lasted during wartime.
They called it motor man because there were only men who did it, and these were the first women who were ever hired. And after they left, no other women were hired to either run trolley or drive bus until the 1970s.
It has been almost 50 years since Helen took her place at the front of the car.
Fun. I wish one of my kids were here. One of my little ones could watch it. They'd get a big bang out of this. Okay, where do you want to go?
9 presidents have come and gone since she rang the bell and released the air brake. 5 decades since Bonnie funneled the tokens into their place and herded smokers onto the rear platform.
No smoking. Nope, out here, blizzard and all, out here. And then but some of our gates were made of strong metal. They were open. This whole end would be all open back here. It would not be covered with windows at all.
The metal plates on the post saved the wood from striking matches. Helen remembers kicking aside the metal floor plate and dropping the iron rod that allowed motor persons to switch tracks without leaving the car.
Turn the track. I'm going left, so I have to turn the track so the track turns left.
Bonnie remembers the day the rope holding the trolley pole to the overhead power wire snapped, and she had a cold trip on the roof of the streetcar holding the pole to the wire. Helen says it was all fun, even the day she was robbed.
All I remember was, I don't have any money. How am I going to pay this back? But I didn't have to pay it back.
We could talk to Helen all day, but we really can't, see, because there's a sign and it says, please do not engage the operator in unnecessary conversation.
Please don't talk to me. I used to say, please don't talk to me.
50 years ago this month, the first motorettes and conductorettes were hired. After seeing the movie A League of Their Own about a reunion of professional women baseball players, the MTC's Aaron Isaacs thought that's what the Twin Cities women of the rails needed, and they will have it. In September, those women are invited to return and grasp the controls once more in a tribute to them and an almost forgotten time in Minnesota transit history.
It was a good job, and I'd do it again. If you want to hire me, I'll go back. I would.
Alan Costantini, Carol 11 News, Minneapolis.
No. I don't think the passengers even knew it. I had made the wrong turn, and all I had to do was go around the block and come back again. I don't think anybody realized it. And I didn't tell anybody either. But they'll know it now.
Okay, my name is Della Olson, but my maiden name was Gerber. I worked for the streetcar company under Della Gerber. And I worked out of the Nicollet station, and I preferred working days, although I did work some nights. And I enjoyed it. The gentlemen that I had to work with were terrific.
I'm Maxine Magnuson from Anoka, and I drove streetcars during the war. And I don't have any picture of my uniform. And one day I found a couple little mice on the streetcar, and we're supposed to turn everything in that we found. And I turned it into the supervisor's office, and then within 3 days he said if you could have them. And he called me, and I said I didn't want them, but I'd take them home and give them to my paper boy. So he sent the Tribune out to take a picture of me with my uniform on, but I thought that was too silly. I said, no way.
I'm Helen Swanson, and I worked out of the Lake Street station. I drove the Selby Lake throughout the week and the Minnehaha Plymouth on Saturday and Sunday. A drunk driver was on my tracks, coming toward me and hit me head on and smashed his car to pieces, but there was nothing happened to my car.
Okay, my name is Catherine Treadle. I used to be a rulie, and I worked out at Snelling Station in St. Paul in 1993. And One of the best memory I've got of it is one time I was on a two-man car, and we were just leaving the end of the line. I had a girl motorette, and we stopped to pick up somebody, and I thought she had opened up both doors so that I could get out to flag the railroad crossing, but she had opened them up to let somebody else in. Well, I went out the back door, she closed the doors and left me standing there. I waited almost 45 minutes for another streetcar to get back in.
I'm Marguerite Jordan, and I live at Elk River now, and I worked for the streetcar in 1943 and 44. I quit in January. My husband came home from the service, and I went down to Omaha to live. The thing I remember most, I was driving the streetcar, and I had a conductor behind me, and he gave me the bell to go ahead. So I started to close the door, and lo and behold, I looked in the mirror, and there apples and oranges and grapefruit all over the street. The man fell out of the wire gates.
And I worked out at East Side Station from 1943 until about 1953. Then I drove bus out of North Side until June of 57. And I did have some interesting experiences while I was on the streetcar at East Side. I went through an open switch on 11th and Hennepin and kind of got the rear end of another streetcar going west. And that was the end of my night. I didn't work the rest of the night. I went home. I was in tears, but nobody was hurt. It turned out to be kind of humorous, but it was pretty serious to me.
My name is Arlene Taylor Schatzlein, and I worked out of the North Side Streetcar Barns. And I'm in 1944, and I just worked the summer months.
Hi, I'm Noella Marin. I'm from Olivia, Minnesota, and I work for Twin City Rapid Transit at the Snelling Station from the year 1943 to 1945. And the incident that I remember the most of my days is the time I was driving the Como car on Como and Ray Street, and I was going to make a left turn, and I thought I had thrown my switch. And instead of throwing the switch, which I didn't fully do, I went straight on ahead. So we were told to go to the back end of that car and use the motor in the back and push back the traffic. Well, I just stood up and looked. It was Sunday morning, no cars around, so I backed it up and backed it into a nice big gold Cadillac. Pushed the radiator in. That's my highlight.